One time I had a girlfriend who told me, if you ever start feeling really neurotic, the best thing to do is paint your walls white and buy new sheets for your bed. She said it worked for her, and I believed her. Last year, I had a job. It's not important what job it was. What's important is that I thought it was going to be the job of my life, the job of my dreams. Last year, I had this job for a few months, and then I quit. I won't bore you with the details. I quit my job and was feeling really neurotic, so I tore down our house. Actually, I just gutted the inside. Tore down the ceiling and all the lath and plaster on the walls. Tore up the floors. Ripped out the furnace. I ran new wires, rebuilt the kitchen, sheetrocked and taped and sanded, and then I painted the walls white and bought new sheets for the bed. But it didn't work. I was pacing around a lot late at night. I was moaning and groaning in the shower. I was scaring the kids. This is what my son told me one morning at breakfast. He was 4 years old at the time.
Dad? Do you know what, Dad?
What?
Do you know that, you know what you know what I'm gonna do today?
No.
I'm gonna tear down the house. And I'm gonna tear down you, too. You know how? With my ice axe.
You know, he was just 4 years old, and I don't really think he wanted to kill me. Things didn't get better until I started building a rock wall in the backyard. Our house sits on a hillside, and the backyard is really too steep to be of much use. So I dug a trench, 2 feet deep, 50 feet long, to build a retaining wall for a terrace. Then I called a guy with a dump truck and had him bring me 20 tons of rock from a quarry on the north side of town. I wanted to build a drywall, which means you stack the rocks without mortar. The objective is to set the stones in such a way that gravity holds them in place. You arrange them so they are, in effect, falling on one another. The theory is simple. The application is another matter. It's really quite difficult to do it well. And I didn't do it very well, especially at the beginning. But as soon as I started stacking those rocks, things immediately changed. I thought, I could do this the rest of my life. When I was working on the wall, I used the trains downtown for an alarm clock. They're actually there all day long, switching cars and passing through, but at dawn you can really hear them. The sound resonates in this valley like the ringing of a bowl. In the evening, I'd hear the first crickets start in for the night. One evening, my friends Keith and Mark came by with a 12-pack.
I want to take a walk down Merchandise Lane.
What would you buy?
I'd get this sofa unit. The one that connects and looks like a big snake through the living room. Upholstered with rattlesnake skin.
I was working,
So it's
and
like
they were
one
talking,
snake
and at some point Keith told me how our other friend,
snake's
Kenny
on.
Larson, had called him from Los Angeles.
He told me not to tell anybody.
Well, I won't do anything with it. It will be like sacred.
Okay, you can do it. All right. Go ahead, tell him.
No, I can't.
Kenny and I grew up together. We were best friends. He studied English and philosophy in college and learned Chinese from serving a mission in Taiwan. I studied similar useless subjects, and we both spent years pretty much just driving around town in his pickup truck. 4 years ago, he decided he better do something with his life and took a job working for a Taiwanese shipping company in Los Angeles.
I mean, Kenny said don't tell anybody about the fact that he called me up and he said that he was going to be a dog trainer. And he hadn't even told his parents yet.
Is there a particular kind of dog he's going to train?
German Shepherds. He wants to train German Shepherds to be like
a
police dogs. And
So that involved getting dressed in like a burlap suit?
Okay, what justification did
Kenny did not justify his decision. He said he'd been thinking about it for a long time, and he decided that he was, he's sick of the shipping industry, sick of Young Ming lines, and he didn't really like it there. He doesn't like LA. Jill doesn't like it there. They want to move somewhere, and he's thinking about doing something where he can do what he wants to do anywhere that he wants to do it. And I think he's thinking of moving back here and opening a kennel and training dogs.
The rocks I use to build my wall are Paleozoic limestone, more than 500 million years old, the compressed calcium carbonate, the skeletal residue of marine creatures we know so little about, we can't even give them a genus or phylum. The ocean that covered the land where we live dried up or receded, and the rock was buried and turned under a Sahara-like desert, a sulfuric mudflat, a layer of conglomerate deposited by a river from a mountain range that eventually eroded completely away. My rocks were buried for 440 million years until the Wasatch Mountains pushed themselves up out of the bowels of the earth and exposed this layer and all the other layers, sort of how you see them today. The geologist who told me this also said, "You know, mountain ranges are surprisingly ephemeral. They really don't last very long." But when I started stacking the rocks on my drywall, I made certain that I laid every stone in its permanent position. One night after I stopped working, my friend Alex Caldiero came over and started to mess around with my sound equipment. He was born in Sicily, came to Manhattan on a boat when he was 9, lived in Brooklyn for 25 years, and then something happened to him that I don't understand and also do not question. He became a Latter-day Saint and moved to Utah. He was one of the first 5 or 6 original employees for WordPerfect. He was hired because he was a poet who knew nothing about computers. His job was to help write the first instruction manual.
This morning, I rode my bicycle to work. It was cool and pleasant. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. I took the kids shopping for a present for Grandma. They couldn't agree on a present, so we went home empty-handed. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. This evening, my son Isaac announced that one of his teeth is loose. He wouldn't stop moving it back and forth until he pulled it out. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions. Today, it rained. People ran indoors, but I just walked as usual. I sure am learning a lot about computers and their functions.
I tell people Alex is really 500,000 years old. I say this because I think he must have been alive when people first started to talk. He understands every language. He knows all the stories that have ever been told. That night when he came over, he told me the story of Proteus.
And Circe, so Ulysses wants to go home, and Circe tells him how he can do it. And he says, you got to get this guy, Proteus, and hold on to him. And no matter what he changes into, you got to hold on to him. And once you tire him out, he's going to tell you what you got to do to get home. And so, he gets out there and he finds him and he grabs a hold of him, and Proteus begins to change one after another, into a lion, into a bear, just one form after another, and Ulysses is hanging on to him, where normally if he hadn't been warned, he would have maybe let go. That was his great strength, Proteus. He had no strength whatsoever. He was a weak old man, but he dealt in this illusioning kind of thing, where if anybody ever caught him, you can scare him and let him go. And that's how he would win his enemies. And so Ulysses keeps a hold of him until finally he runs out of forms, and gets tired out and becomes an old man. And at that point, he's defeated and he tells him how to get home. And so I think the key is in that holding on.
My drywall still isn't finished. It'll probably take me another year. And when it is finished, I'm going to dig another trench higher up on the hillside, order another 20 or 30 tons of rock, and build another wall. My son is now 5 years old. He starts kindergarten tomorrow. I don't know what he'll do for a living when he grows up, but I wish him the best of luck.
Hi, Dad. Recording something.